Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show, our wild card playoff preview episode. Just one more day before we're back in studio with Jack and Zach. Right now, it's just me and Ziggy here having a bad storm in New Jersey, and Zach's a little under the weather. So we decided to try and get the Saturday games knocked out for this Wednesday episode, and then we'll be back with the full Sunday and Monday reactions with the entire crew coming up shortly. But as I said, Paul joined by Robert Ziggy Ziegler, who's back home in California. He's also, Ziggy, if I'm correct, you're close to being back in your studio at Virginia, right?
Yeah, Virginia studio should be coming back later this week. So it's going to be a good time for everyone.
Okay, awesome. That's good to hear. We'll be back at full strength. Just want to thank everyone. We've been having a little bit of a boom lately on this channel, and we do really appreciate all of the support that we've gotten over the past few weeks. A lot of really nice comments, encouraging comments. A lot of them are Packers fans at the end of the day, but it's nice to see that a lot of Texans fans have enjoyed our content as well. So we're trying to get into more and more fan bases, but we do appreciate everyone who's been listening, and keep leaving comments and leave your opinion on your team, because at the end of the day, we can't see everything. We're trying to watch as many games as we can and comment on all these teams, but no one knows their team better than their own fans. Like Ziggy and I know the Vikings better than most people, but these Packer fans and Texans fans who leave comments, Browns fans, you guys know the team, frankly, better than us. So it's nice that we can learn more and more about your team through you. We always do appreciate those comments. And with that said, the first game we're going to talk about is the Texans and the Browns from Houston. The Browns, a 2.5 point road favorite. Have an idea, maybe, Ziggy, where Jack would be in this one. But these are two of the best stories all year in the NFL. On one side, you have DeMeco Ryans, CJ Stroud, both rookies, one a head coach, one the starting quarterback. No one thought they'd be any good. We've talked at length about how if you went up and down the roster to start the season, you really wouldn't pluck any player from that team as a star. Here they are, division winners hosting a playoff game. And then on the other side, Kevin Stefanski, probably going to be coach of the year, 4 or 5 different starting quarterbacks in Cleveland, and Joe Flacco comes off the couch to lead the Browns to a wild card berth, nearly a division win. We were saying right before we started the show, if Flacco's able to go on a run here, it would be one of the best stories in the history of football. Going on some sort of Super Bowl run, perhaps, with the Browns. I mean, this is just, we've been floored that Flacco is even playing in the NFL right now, let alone the level he's been, particularly his last 2 starts, just through the roof. So before we get into breaking down the game, Ziggy, is this magical run for Flacco? Do you see it continuing into the postseason?
I mean, you have to wonder, after all of the bad luck that Browns fans have had to endure, really since the NFL merger, right? Things were good before then, but since the NFL's merger, the Browns and the Lions have sort of been in a neck-and-neck race for the worst off, unluckiest team in the NFL. You have to think that's worth something if you're wondering whether their lucky streak is going to continue. And frankly, if they go on a Super Bowl run here, that might pay off all of that bad luck that every Browns fan has had to endure. But the thing is the way Joe Flacco is playing is super volatile, right? It's as if Joe Flacco's sort of been unleashed from the old Baltimore days, and now he can do whatever he wants. So I think it's absolutely possible that he continues this streak, right? He's got the pieces around him. He's willing to play ball, but it's just as likely, I think, that a few plays that have gone their way in the previous games don't go their way anymore and things bottom out.
Well, I went back and I watched his past 3 games. It was the Texans game, the Jets, both of those. Flacco was unbelievable. I mean, if you go back and watch the Texans game from week 16, I think it was, I mean, he was just playing on another level. And then a week before that, when they played the Chicago Bears back in Cleveland, one of those games where Chicago's getting after Joe and making him make mistakes. And this Browns offense can be either really, really good or really bad. And you're right. Flacco takes a lot of chances, and when it pays off, it looks unbelievable. But there are times where he's forcing some throws into tight windows, and you have the risk of an interception there. And in a playoff game, we know that could change the momentum in a second. But really, the 6 of the last 8 quarters, we've seen great Joe Flacco, which I never thought I'd be saying that sentence again. But that's why I do have a lot of faith that this isn't just a magical run at the moment. I think Flacco is actually just playing good football and fits in nicely with what the Browns want to do. As long as he doesn't make mistakes, they're going to be a tough out for anyone here. Do you think, like, do you see Super Bowl contender status, though, if he plays at, let's just say, an average level, given the rest of the team around him?
Super Bowl contender status is a tough sell. I think they have to be feeling pretty good that they drew the Texans. We'll talk about it more as we get into the breakdown, but the Texans, I think, are a pretty good matchup, which is why they're favorites on the road in the playoffs, despite all their injuries. But the fact is, at a certain point, the luck has to run out. And it's tough for me to see this Browns team. It's tough for me to see this Browns team going into Baltimore, going into Buffalo, beating the 49ers. Like, the kinds of things you have to do to win a Super Bowl, you have to be an excellent team in every phase of the game. I'm not sure they're going to be able to keep it going that long.
I have the same opinion. Going to Baltimore is a place where I think, despite Flacco's success there and his history, if the Browns went into Baltimore, I could see that as a game where they're getting to Flacco all game, a couple interceptions, game's over rather quickly. While Houston, meanwhile, though, as I said, we just saw him go in there and light it up. I'm not expecting much different. I think Flacco's going to have a lot of success in this game here. Just one nice little story that I wanted to say about what the Browns and Flacco did is he needed to play 50% of the offensive snaps to receive a $75,000 bonus last week. And Cleveland, of course, they want to rest him heading into the playoffs. He's 38 years old. They wound up just giving that to him as a roster bonus anyway. So a little nice reward for what Flacco's done over the past few weeks. But I was just thinking, with Deshaun Watson being in Cleveland now for a couple of years, I don't think he's ever peaked at the level we've seen these Flacco peaks be over the past 5 weeks. And in many ways, we've said if Watson played to this level, people would view the Browns as a Super Bowl contender. So if you get great Joe Flacco, it's about as good as you've seen in Cleveland for a long, long time. That's why I do think that they have an outside Super Bowl chance. It is just a matter of getting someone who isn't completely trustworthy to play at a high level. But this is the most fun Cleveland sports has had, I mean, since LeBron, right? Like since LeBron won the title.
Yeah, I mean, there's been ups and downs for lots of Cleveland sports. They had that little bit of a run a few years ago of basketball. But like, look, if Njoku is able to keep getting 40-yard gains of Flacco, if Amari Cooper keeps putting up 150 plus yards a game, like Joe Flacco will deliver the ball to people downfield. Yep. He's shown that he can do this. He will set up a great play action game. And I mean, look, with their defense, 2 or 3 explosive plays that result in a touchdown drive, if you're putting up a little over 20 points a game, you can win with this Browns team, right? This is a good situation for him to be in. You just have to hope there aren't the kinds of interceptions that make the defense's life impossible.
Yeah, it's going to come down to the turnovers because you're right. They do have the weapons, and Amari Cooper is someone a lot of people forget about as being one of the better receivers in the NFL. He's not that old, Amari Cooper. He still has those 195-yard games, or what did he have? Did he have 200?
It was like 220, right?
Like I think he had like 265 yards against the Texans in their first game. But this is not a team devoid of weapons. You think about the injuries they've had this year to Chubb, to Watson. That offense has been plagued with their star players, yet there's still a lot of explosion there. And it's just, again, it's all going to come down to Flacco not turning the ball over, being safe with it, while still having a little bit of that gunslinger mentality. It'll be a lot of fun for Browns fans, hopefully. Let's talk about the Texans a little bit. This is a fan base that has seen a lot of our content throughout the year. We've loved talking about CJ Stroud, kind of got on that train earlier in the season before he took off, and Texans fans have been really appreciative of that, and we've been very appreciative of them leaving comments and watching these videos. And now here we are. It worked out perfectly for everyone. We had a win and get in game against the Colts. We all believed that was one where CJ Stroud would come in, be the superior quarterback, make enough big plays to carry Houston. That's exactly what we saw. Now you guys are hosting a playoff game. Is CJ Stroud ready to carry a team on a playoff run in the NFL playoffs, though, Ziggy? Because getting there was one thing. There were a lot of tough battles to get there. But now that he's in the playoffs, do you trust him in the big game situation here?
CJ Stroud is going to have to play well against great defenses. And you have to worry looking back. There's a lot to be excited about with CJ Stroud, but you have to worry about the Jets game, right? The Jets absolutely had his number and rolled the Texans that game. Now, CJ Stroud, one thing we've said about him all season is that he learns from his mistakes, right? He consistently improves when he screws things up. And even though he hasn't been perfect, he's gotten better as the season has gone on. So it'll be important that he learns the lessons that he needs to from that game as he goes against another difficult defense in the Browns. Now, look, when CJ Stroud's playing, the Texans are extremely effective, right? He's third in the NFL in yards per attempt. He's 10th in EPA per play. Like when CJ Stroud has been passing the ball, this team is very good. And you can see just how much of a difference he makes because for the couple of games that he missed, the Texans offense looked totally different.
Oh, completely.
So it's going to be, yeah, I mean, it wasn't the same team at all. So the Texans are one of those teams, sort of like how the Browns have, actually. They thrive off those deep play passes, right? They're second in average depth of target. CJ Stroud is really able to deliver the ball deep. Without Tank Dell, we've seen CJ Stroud continue to play well. Nico Collins keeps doing things right. So I'm optimistic that he's going to be able to play well against the Browns defense, even though in the back of my head, I'm a little bit worried because of what we saw against New York.
Yeah, the New York game is there. You have to remember that was a weird weather game too. The strange, Zach Wilson threw for 300 yards in that game. We'll talk a little bit more about the issues the Texans secondary has had this year. But that was a weird day at MetLife. I remember it being pretty miserable to play football, the weather around here at the time. But I wanted to go back to something you said a moment ago because I completely agree with you. I'm not sure that there's anyone in the NFL who's more valuable to their team than CJ Stroud is to the Texans. Because you go back and watch what they looked like with Case Keenum or Davis Mills under center. And I mean, this is like that's the team that you see winning 2 games, 3 games, and picking in the top 3. And it's all it takes is that one player to be added in. And CJ Stroud has them at a playoff level. When you watch them with and without him, it is a night and day team. And that's why with him playing, you can't really look back on this past Browns game and put too much stock into it. Because when Case Keenum's turning it over, he's getting sacked left and right. That just sucks all the momentum out of the stadium. It sucks all the energy out of your defense. Him being added back into this game puts a completely different twist on it. So I look over the whole entire AFC right now. Stroud's probably the 4th best quarterback. If I were picking quarterbacks to lead my team in this AFC playoff race, I'd probably go Lamar, Allen, and Mahomes. That might be the order. I'm not sure. But then it would be Stroud. And would you agree with that? Would you put Flacco, Tua, or obviously not Mason Rudolph, but like Stroud is the clear 4 there, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. Joe Flacco's played all right, but CJ Stroud is kind of just better Joe Flacco at this point.
He's a superstar.
So, yeah, and I mean, I'm excited to see what CJ Stroud does. I don't know if you saw the clip of him on the Pat McAfee show, but
great.
They told him the way people are talking that the Browns are going to blow them out. Nobody has the Texans winning. They don't have any chance. And he just looks them dead in the eye and says, no one thinks we can win. All right. Like this team is ready to play. So I'm excited. Houston fans, you can tell us if you feel this way in the comments, but the way I've seen it, the team is energized. The fans are energized. Like this is going to be a tough stadium to go into and play. So I'm certainly expecting the Texans. I get why they're not favored, but CJ Stroud absolutely's got a run in him.
Oh, the line that I took away from the McAfee interview was when he said winners win, losers lose. And you saw Pat kind of smirk on it. He knew exactly, he understood the gravity of that statement there, where CJ Stroud feels like a winner. I know he didn't win at Ohio State. He hasn't done anything yet really in the NFL, but he has that feeling of when he has the ball at the end of the game, he's going to get the job done. He's done it all season long. And that's spread throughout the Texans locker room where that team felt like a losing franchise for a long time now. He's come in and flipped that immediately. There's no one in this playoff field that I don't think the Texans can hang with. Do I expect them to go on a Super Bowl run? No. I mean, it would be kind of crazy to say that. But do I think that CJ Stroud can put this team on his back similar to the way a star does in the NCAA tournament? Yeah, I can see that kind of a run from Houston. Like he's that good. So I think there is a little magic on both sides of the ball in this contest where we could see a Flacco run, we could see a Stroud run. I know this is a great first test for each team to kind of get their feet off the ground and get going here. So why don't we talk about the game a little bit? When I said earlier, you can't really put too much stock into the Week 16 game because CJ Stroud was playing in that one, or was not playing in that one. Neither was Will Anderson. But you can look at the performance Flacco had. He was 27 for 42, 368 yards, 3 touchdowns. And Amari Cooper goes for 11 catches, 265 yards, and 2 touchdowns himself. Is there a way here? How are you looking at Houston trying to slow down Flacco?
This game is going to come down to who's able to limit explosive plays. And unfortunately for Houston, their defense has been pretty vulnerable to explosive plays, right? All season long, they've been good against the run. They've been good against the short and intermediate pass game. Deep passes have been a problem. But on the other hand, they have been one of the better teams in the NFL at getting to the quarterback, right? When they send 4 rushers, they're 5th in sack percentage, they're 12th in sack percentage overall. And it's been the pass rush and players like Will Anderson that have really done a decent job shoring up that weakness in the secondary. Now, the Browns' offensive line is hurt, right? They've had injury issues of their tackles, and Joe Flacco's not a particularly mobile quarterback. So if you're Houston on defense and you're trying to make Joe Flacco make mistakes, you're trying to limit the explosive plays, it's going to come down to whether or not you can get to Joe Flacco. Because if you can get to him, you can hit him, you can get him off his game, you can tip a ball, you can force an interception. But if he's allowed to sit back in the pocket, get play action going, get deep bombs to Njoku and Amari Cooper, I don't think the Texans are going to be able to win.
Completely agree. He'll pick you apart if you give him time. Some more numbers on Houston here. They blitz on 21% of dropbacks. That's 28th in the NFL. Like you said, they send 4 rushers a lot, but they have the 2nd highest percentage in QB knockdowns, the 7th highest percentage in QB hurries, 4th highest pressure rate in the NFL in general. Like, they get after the quarterback a lot. I don't believe their sack numbers are particularly good this season compared to other like their actual sack count, but they get after people. It's just a matter of, finishing the job sometimes. So I completely agree. I think it's going to come down to that Houston defensive line causing chaos for Flacco. Otherwise, he's going to sit back there and he still has plenty of arm talent to get the job done. So I'm with you there. When I look at who I think is going to win this game, I want to take Houston so bad because we've been on them all year long. It's been fun rooting for them. I just think Cleveland's the better team. And it's hard to pick against Stroud because he is the better quarterback in this one. He's the superstar. But I do think at the end of the day, this Browns defense is really good. Flacco's been hot. I'm going Cleveland in a close game. I don't like it. How about you?
I'm optimistic about the Texans more than you, and I'll tell you why. You read off Joe Flacco's stats. He said 8 touchdowns in his past 3 games, and that's pretty good. He's also had 6 interceptions in his past 3 games. Yeah. So the fact is, Joe Flacco is able to make mistakes. And the good news for the Texans, I know the Browns defense is good. I know their secondary is one of the 3 or 4 best in the NFL. You could argue it is the best. But CJ Stroud is good, and he's going to get some explosive plays. You don't need to shut down Joe Flacco. You just need to get him to make enough mistakes that CJ Stroud can carry the load. So I think we're going to see a pretty similar stat line to the last game Joe Flacco played against the Texans. You're going to get over 300 yards. You're going to get a handful of touchdowns, but you're going to get a couple interceptions too. I think that's going to be the difference maker. And I also think this game's going to be close, but I think it's going to go the other way. CJ Stroud and the Texans are going to get it done.
Yeah, I love to see that. I'm going to be rooting for the Texans. Like I won't lie to people and say just because I picked the Browns, I'm rooting for them. I hope to see Houston go on a little run here. They're so much fun to watch. Still, the Flacco storyline is great, but yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. They're great teams on both sides of the ball, and I'm happy that we got to see Houston instead of Indianapolis or Jacksonville. They're more fun to watch for me. The Flacco storyline too. It's going to be a great game. Why don't we move on to Dolphins and Chiefs? That's the Saturday night game. Kansas City right now, a 4-point favorite at home. And we remember these two teams did meet in week 9 in Germany. I remember watching that with producer Zach in his house. We all know, big Dolphins fan. And it didn't start off well. 21-0 at halftime. There was the Tyreek Hill fumble, crazy lateral return for a touchdown from Kansas City. But then Miami claws their way back. They start running the football a lot better in the second half. What do we see? And we've seen it so many times this year. On that last game-tying drive, Tua misses I believe it was a pretty big underthrow to Cedric Wilson, who was running basically free down the far sideline. Would have tied the game. Next snap is fumbled. Kansas City recovers. Game over, 21-14. Chiefs win that one. Think about it. Miami wins that game. They're the number 2 seed. So these close losses Miami had all year comes back to haunt you here in this situation. You have to go on the road. And let's start with the Dolphins, and we'll start with that big pressing question. Do you have faith in Tua Tagovailoa in the big games, in the big moments, on the big drives to come through? Or do you think it's going to be much of the same where something goes wrong?
This was such a bad finish to the end of the season for the Dolphins. The Dolphins, it seemed more or less, had the 1 seed locked. And really, if you look back, all they had to do was win one of their last 5 games, and they would have won the division. I mean, they go 0-5. They lose to the Titans. I guess they did beat the Jets, but then you beat the Cowboys. You lose to the Ravens. You lose to the Bills. Like, it's not a satisfying way to end the season. And I'm sure sticking out in their head is going to be that brutal loss to the Bills at home.
The Titans is the one that I keep going back to.
Yeah, but it's just, both of those losses, the 2 bad home losses, are tough. So I don't know. There's so much to like about this Dolphins team, and that's what's so frustrating. The offense, even though it's let them down in big moments, still is really good. They're so good at passing, right? They've got the best weapons in the NFL in the passing game. They've got the best rushing offense in the NFL. You could argue they have 2 top 5 running backs on their team playing at the same time. So the defense, it's been up and down, but there's a lot to like. It's just so hard to believe in this team after everything we've seen. And I hate buying into those storylines, right? I hate when people say like, oh, this team's really good, but they're bad against teams over 500. Because the team's a team, right? You've got to be good to win NFL games. It's tough for me to believe that they're going to be able to get it done in Arrowhead against an angry Chiefs team, given all the struggles they've had this year.
Look, to me, it comes down to this is similar to the Texans. I'm rooting for the Dolphins to win this game, but I've lost my faith in Tua. It's unfortunate because he has these spectacular moments, but then you see in these big games against the Bills, against the Ravens, he just started crumbling. He makes one mistake, and next thing you know, he's getting sacked. A bunch of risky throws that could be intercepted. Eagles game, big drive, throws an interception. Chiefs game, misses the throw to Wilson. Bills game just here to win the division, throws a pick. It's the same story every single time with Tua. And Zach said it a couple times on the show. He gets sacked a couple times, and all of a sudden, something seems to go off in his head where he loses his confidence and he starts making a lot of decisions, a lot of throws that you don't normally see from him, and he's just a little bit off. And at the end of the day, in a playoff game like this, when you have other guys like Patrick Mahomes, like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, if you win, you have to go face them. Those are quarterbacks who make the big play. They improvise, they get out of the pocket, and they make spectacular things happen. Tua will take the sacks, and that's when they get behind the chains, they make mistakes, and we see Miami, who should have been the 2 seed. There's no reason. The 1 seed, I get, you go to Baltimore. That's a tough game no matter what. The Ravens, to me, felt destined to be the 1 seed this year. But Miami should be hosting playoff games this year. I think they're one of the biggest disappointments in football at the end of the day. And it's sad to say that because they had such a good season. And it was the best Dolphins year in what, 30 years we talked about on the show? 30 years maybe for the Dolphins. And you're the 6th seed? That could not have been the case. It sucks that this fairy tale of a year is now turning pedestrian. But that's because in big moments, Tua doesn't come through. And I like the guy a lot. I think he's a really good quarterback. But when it matters, he doesn't make the play. I don't have any faith in the Dolphins to win this one, even though I do expect a good game. And we'll talk about the game in a second. Why don't we move on to the Chiefs now? The question around them and it's been this way all year, is the offense going to wake up? Are they ever going to get back to the form that we've seen in the past? And we were saying right before we started the record here, it doesn't have to necessarily. Like, think about those other Chiefs offenses. We're talking all-time great offenses led by Patrick Mahomes. This year, they just don't have the weapons around him. They don't have the weapons. Travis Kelce's been terrible. What's he had? 5 catches for 28 yards, 5 for 44, 3 for 16. That's his last 3 games. He's been non-existent. It's a Chiefs offense that has just been okay. And is that good enough, in your opinion, to go on another run to defend their title?
You're right to call the Chiefs offense just okay. People have been acting like this is one of the worst offenses in the NFL because of how different it looks. But one thing they have been really good at is limiting negative plays. Mahomes is not throwing a lot of interceptions. The ones he does throw are largely not his fault, but in general, they've taken care of the ball. Mahomes continues to rarely take sacks, right? He's second in the NFL in pressure to sack rate.
He's so good at that.
Yeah, I mean, there have been very few players in NFL history that are better at avoiding sacks than him. And there is a formula to winning in the NFL where you have an elite defense and an offense that rarely makes mistakes. So they're going to have to keep that going. On the other hand, it's tough to win games, especially in the AFC of all these explosive offenses, when you can't rely on your offense to do basically anything, right? The Chiefs are 31st in average depth of target. Every single thing they do needs to be produced by either Pacheco or receivers after the catch. And not only are the receivers not producing yards after the catch, they're not even catching the ball for the most part, right? It feels like every single week there's 1 or 2 critical drops. Because they always come at the worst time.
Just say the word drop.
Yeah, just say Kadarius Toney.
Just say Kadarius Toney.
He's been the nemesis of this season. Yeah. So you've got a Chiefs offense that runs through curl routes, right? I went back and looked. Every single starting receiver, their most targeted route is a curl route. Like, that is an offense that's got no creativity, little ingenuity, and just isn't working. So it's going to be on the defense to carry a lot of the load, and that might be good enough to beat the Dolphins. I think it probably will be. I don't think it's going to be enough to go on a Super Bowl run.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. And that's weird to hear that lack of ingenuity, uncreative. That's not the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes offense that we've come to see and, love watching. So that's a little strange the way this season's progressed for them offensively. But I'm with you. I do think that they'll be okay. Why don't we talk about the game a little bit here? When it comes down to Miami versus Kansas City, I think you're going to see a similar matchup to the Week 9 game where it's kind of back and forth. It was a 21-0 lead, but it wasn't a 21-0 score or gameplay. The Tyreek Hill fumble really changed the way that game, the first half looked. So I think you're going to see back and forth. I expect good Dolphins in the first half. The offense, we didn't even talk about the injuries. The Dolphins on the defensive side of the ball, Jalen Phillips out, Bradley Chubb out, Van Ginkel out, their starting linebackers out, Xavier Howard's out. So many stars on that defense are not going to be playing in this one. That only helps the Kansas City effort. Offensively, though, Miami should be mostly healthy. I think they're going to be able to move the ball up and down the field. It's just when will that critical mistake happen? And I do expect it to happen. So I think you'll get a really competitive game, a fun one. The Dolphins will just make 1 to 2 too many mistakes down the stretch, and Kansas City will wind up winning by about maybe 7 points. Maybe it could be a field goal game, but tight game. Chiefs win. How about you?
If you're a Dolphins fan, don't look at the injury report because the Dolphins injury report is always scary to look at. I mean, here's their injury report for today. Some things: Jalen Waddle, limited ankle; Jalen Ramsey, limited knee; Mostert, limited knee ankle; Hill, limited ankle and a new quad injury. Xavier Howard did not practice, foot. Taron Armstead did not practice, knee, ankle. Right? So it seems like every star is hurt, but I expect them basically all to come back and play. There's a critical player missing for the Dolphins in that first matchup, right? HN wasn't playing. It was all on Mostert. And HN had arguably, I know he was injured, but on a per play basis, maybe the best season we have ever seen from a running back.
He was.
How many yards? You know how many yards per carry he averaged, Paul?
I know it was up around 8 at one point. I'm
he finished at 7.8. over on 103
Ziggy,
touches.
When you look at the average yards per carry for Achane, it's, or at least the players around him, everyone else, it's like, a quarterback or receiver who ran the ball once or twice during the season. He's the only guy. Do you know how many carries he ended with?
He had 103.
Yeah, 103 to average 7 yards.
I mean, that's an NFL record by 1.5 yards per carry.
Yeah,
for players who've had over 100.
For anyone who enjoys metrics or any Dolphins fans, go look at the average yards per carry, and you'll see Achane in a league of his own. It's unbelievable what he did this year. Sorry to interrupt you. I was blown away from that number.
You know the last player to average over 6 yards per carry on over 100 carries, Paul?
No.
Mercury Morris, who was also a Miami Dolphin when he did it, actually, funny enough. But the point is just this rarely happens. And then you look at the Chiefs' run defense, and as good as their pass defense has been, and as good as their secondary has been, they're 30th in rushing EPA. They're 24th in yards per attempt allowed at 4.5. And the Dolphins thrive off getting a good running game going and play action. So while it's easy to count the Dolphins out because of their struggles against big teams, those big teams have mostly had pretty good run defenses. So I think there's good reason to believe, actually, that if the Dolphins can get their running backs healthy and get things going on the ground, the Chiefs, who thrive in man and are terrible in zone, are going to have to overcommit to the run. And then Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, off to the races, 1 million touchdowns. So the Dolphins do have a path to victory for this game.
Oh, for sure.
Is it going to happen? I don't think so. I really badly want it to happen. I'd love to see this Dolphins team do well. It's always good to watch producer Zach have a good time. But it's just tough for me to see this Dolphins team going on the road in Arrowhead and winning.
I'm with you. I stand right with you. It would be nice to see a Dolphins run. They're a fun team to watch, man. When they're rolling, some of the throws Tua makes, you'll see him thread the needle in the middle of the field to Tyreek, and there's 4 guys there, and he just puts it like when they're clicking. There's not many offenses in the league that are more enjoyable to just sit back and watch. Again, just when are they going to make that mistake? And I expect it to happen. A great slate for Saturday. We'll see if we are recording. We're not sure what our playoff reaction schedule is going to look like, but we'll try and get something out over the weekend. So yeah, I got the Browns and the Chiefs. Ziggy has the Texans and the Chiefs. It's 2 great games, 4 really fun teams, 4 great stories throughout the season. I guess both of these teams have played each other earlier in the year too, so you have revenge narratives from earlier. I can't wait to watch them, and we will be back, as we said, on Thursday morning with our Sunday breakdown and our Monday preview of the Eagles and the Buccaneers. It'll be nice to have everyone back. We'll be in studio. We're still trying to get used to these. It's weird, Ziggy. I'm looking at a camera this whole time, and at the end of the day, and I'm more of a like the podcast in studio guy than look directly into a camera. You're over here to my right, so I haven't even seen your face this entire recording. But it's good. It's fun to get these reps in here, and we enjoy doing the show. If you have any comments, questions, just drop it in. We see everything, and we'll address them. If you have any questions that you want to have touched on for the Thursday episode, I have nothing else. Do you have any closing comments for the Saturday game?
I was going to say one last thing for the fans. We're always looking for off-season content. As tough as it is to think, there's only a few weeks of NFL football left.
Yeah.
If y'all got stuff you'd like to see us do during the offseason, things you'd like to see us talking about, particular stuff to look at, our draft coverage is going to start soon. Anything you're interested in, leave a comment. We'll take a look. We're always happy to get suggestions about what to do during the long slog that is the NFL offseason.
It is long. It is long. I feel like we do a decent job of finding content. We'll pull things out thin air. But the draft content's gonna be great this year. So many young quarterbacks that are gonna be fun to predict where they're heading and the impact they can make on their new teams. But we still got the playoffs for now, so we'll enjoy that. And we'll see you guys with the Thursday morning episode. For Paul, for Ziggy, see you soon.